The scream tore through the Meridian Grand Ballroom like a blade through silk. Not terror, shock. The kind that hits when the world tilts sideways and nothing makes sense anymore. Every conversation at Chicago's most exclusive charity gala died as heads snapped toward the marble staircase beneath the crystal chandeliers. Standing there, glowing like something unreal, was the woman they'd all ignored for 7 months. Their housekeeper. Their invisible servant. Wearing a gown worth more than most of their houses. And beside her, touching her like he owned her, stood Roman Devereaux, Chicago's most feared mafia boss. If you want to see how this ends, stay until the final word. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let's begin. Claire Whitmore's hands still smelled like bleach. She'd scrubbed Vanessa Holloway's marble countertops 4 hours earlier, on her knees in the penthouse kitchen, while Vanessa stood nearby sipping champagne and complaining to her friends about how difficult it was finding good help in Chicago. Now Claire stood in her tiny studio apartment staring at the garment bag hanging from her bathroom door. The ivory dress inside cost more than most people earned in 5 years. Her mother had sent it. Evelyn Whitmore didn't ask questions when Claire called. She just said, "I'll have it there by morning," and hung up. 18 hours later, black SUVs arrived outside Claire's building carrying stylists, security, and a handwritten note tucked inside the garment bag. You were never invisible. You only chose silence. Claire traced her fingers across the crystal-embroidered silk and felt something cold settle in her chest. Tonight would change everything. She'd spent 7 months living anonymously in Chicago. No family name, no status, no safety net. Just a different version of herself. A version wealth people walked past without seeing. A version Vanessa Holloway treated like furniture. But tonight, the mask came off. And Chicago society had no idea what was coming. 3 weeks earlier, Vanessa had cornered Claire in the penthouse hallway. "You know what would be hilarious," Vanessa said, leaning against the doorframe with that sharp smile she wore when cruelty felt entertaining. "You should come to the charity gala next month." Claire kept folding towels. "I'm serious," Vanessa continued. "Wear whatever you own. I'm sure you'll find something appropriate." The laughter from Vanessa's friends echoed from the living room. Claire said nothing. She'd learned early that silence was armor. Wealthy people expected reactions. They fed on discomfort, so she gave them nothing. But Vanessa misread the silence. She thought it meant weakness. She thought Claire had no options. She thought wrong. Claire Whitmore was born into American fashion royalty. Her mother, Evelyn Whitmore, built an empire dressing presidents' wives, Hollywood legends, and billionaire heiresses. The Whitmore name opened doors most people didn't know existed. Magazine covers, front row seats at Paris Fashion Week, private jets to Milan. Claire hated all of it. Not the beauty, the fakeness. Every smile felt bought. Every friendship felt transactional. People loved the Whitmore name, not the person wearing it. At 25, she disappeared. No dramatic exit, no public announcement. She just stopped showing up. Her family panicked. Her mother hired investigators. Her father threatened lawyers. But Claire stayed gone. She wanted 1 year. Just 1 year living as someone ordinary to discover who she actually was without privilege attached to her identity. Chicago became her experiment. She rented a studio apartment in a neighborhood where nobody recognized her face. She applied to a housekeeping agency using a fake resume. She learned what it meant to become invisible to people who only respected status. And she learned that cruelty looked different when you had nothing. Vanessa Holloway wasn't openly vicious. That would have been too obvious. Instead, she practiced the kind of cruelty wealthy people perfected, the kind wrapped in politeness. She'd ask Claire to re-clean rooms that were already spotless. She'd leave messes deliberately, then sigh heavily when Claire had to stay late. She'd have conversations with guests as if Claire wasn't standing 3 feet away holding a vacuum. "Good help is so hard to find anymore," Vanessa said once while Claire scrubbed wine stains from the marble floor. "You really have to train them properly." The guest nodded sympathetically. Claire kept scrubbing. She told herself this was research, a social experiment, a way to understand how people treated those they perceived as powerless. But some nights, alone in her apartment, she wondered if she was punishing herself. If maybe she wanted to feel small. If maybe she deserved it for growing up with everything while others had nothing. Then the gala invitation arrived, and everything changed. Shit. The night of the gala, Claire stood in front of her bathroom mirror while the stylist adjusted the ivory gown. "Your mother said to remind you," the stylist murmured, pinning a crystal-embroidered section near Claire's shoulder, "that this dress was never meant to hide." Claire studied her reflection. The gown fit like it was alive. Thousands of hand-stitched crystals caught the light in impossible patterns. The silk moved like liquid. Fashion insiders would recognize it immediately. The Eleanor Laurent original, the Milan finale dress that was never released to the public. Her mother's masterpiece. "She also said," the stylist continued quietly, "that you should stop apologizing for being powerful." Claire's throat tightened. She hadn't realized how much she'd been shrinking herself until now. How much she'd been trying to disappear. How much she'd believed that privilege made her unworthy of anything real. But tonight wasn't about apologies. Tonight was about mirrors. Vanessa Holloway wanted to humiliate her? Fine. Let's see what happens when cruelty meets consequence. The Meridian Grand Ballroom looked like something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Marble staircases curved elegantly toward the main floor. Chicago's wealthiest moved through the space like they owned the air itself. Billionaires, politicians, old money families whose names appeared on hospital wings and university buildings. Claire arrived alone. She stood at the top of the marble staircase, one hand resting lightly on the railing, and let the moment breathe. The ballroom didn't notice her immediately. Conversations continued. Champagne flowed. Laughter echoed. Then someone near the bar saw her. A woman in her 50s, dripping in diamonds, froze mid-sentence. "Oh my God," her voice carried. Heads turned, and suddenly, every conversation in the ballroom died. Claire descended the staircase slowly. The ivory gown shimmered beneath the chandeliers, crystals catching light with every step. The silk flowed around her like she was walking through water. Fashion insiders near the bar started whispering immediately. "That's an Eleanor Laurent original. Wait, that was the Milan finale dress. That piece was never released. How did she—" Across the ballroom, Vanessa Holloway stood frozen near the champagne fountain, her face drained of color, because 3 nights earlier she'd invited Claire as entertainment, a cruel little spectacle, a joke. Now Claire Whitmore stood glowing beneath the chandeliers wearing a gown worth more than Vanessa's penthouse, and every person in the ballroom was staring, not at Vanessa, at her housekeeper. Botch. Claire reached the main floor and moved through the crowd with calm precision. People parted instinctively. Phones appeared. Cameras flashed. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Who is she? I've never seen her before. That dress. How did she get that dress?" Claire ignored them all. She moved toward the bar, ordered sparkling water, and waited. Because she wasn't here for the crowd. She was here for one person. Vanessa. Vanessa Holloway felt like the floor was tilting. This wasn't possible. Claire was a housekeeper. Nobody. Invisible. How was she wearing that dress? Vanessa's husband, Nathan Holloway, appeared beside her looking confused. "Who's that?" he asked, staring at Claire. Vanessa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because admitting the truth meant admitting she'd spent 7 months treating someone important like garbage. And the Holloways didn't make those kinds of mistakes. "I don't know," Vanessa lied, but her voice cracked. Nathan noticed. "You okay?" "Fine," Vanessa snapped. "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. She felt exposed, like every cruel comment she'd ever made was suddenly visible. Then the ballroom doors opened again, and Roman Devereaux walked in. The shift was immediate. Conversations didn't just pause, they stopped breathing. Even billionaires lowered their voices when the Mafia boss entered the room. Roman Devereaux moved like a knife through silk, smooth, deliberate, impossibly dangerous. Tall, calm, dressed in a black tailored suit that probably cost more than most cars. His face was unreadable. His eyes were cold. Rumors followed him everywhere. Criminal empire, political leverage, men disappearing after crossing him. Blood money older than the city itself. Nobody knew exactly what Roman controlled, but everyone knew you didn't cross him. And tonight, his eyes were locked on one person. Claire, Mike. The crowd parted as Roman crossed the ballroom. People stepped aside instinctively, like prey making room for a predator. He didn't acknowledge anyone, didn't smile, didn't nod. He just walked straight toward the bar where Claire stood holding her sparkling water, looking calm and untouchable beneath the chandeliers. Vanessa's heart stopped, because Roman Devereaux stopped directly beside Claire, then slid one hand possessively around her waist. His voice was smooth and deadly quiet. "My wife looks breathtaking tonight." The ballroom exploded. She can. Phones appeared instantly. Cameras flashed. Whispers turned into shouts. Wife? Nobody knew Roman Devereaux was married. The man was a ghost, a legend, a nightmare people whispered about but never confronted. And now he stood in the middle of Chicago's most exclusive gala with his hand around the waist of the woman everyone had just been photographing. Claire remained perfectly still. She didn't flinch, didn't react. She just leaned slightly into Roman's touch and looked directly at Vanessa Holloway across the ballroom and smiled. Mati. Vanessa felt like she was drowning. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. Claire, her housekeeper, was married to Roman Devereaux. Nathan grabbed Vanessa's arm. "Did you know about this?" "No," Vanessa whispered. "Then how?" "I don't know." But she did know one thing. She'd just humiliated the wife of the most dangerous man in Chicago, in public, for 7 months. Roman's voice cut through the noise. "Vanessa." The ballroom went silent. Roman didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice carried weight like gravity. Vanessa turned slowly, her face pale, her hands shaking. Roman studied her with cold, patient eyes. "You invited my wife," he said quietly. "To entertain yourself?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Vanessa opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Claire stepped forward slightly, still calm, still composed. "Vanessa told me to wear whatever I owned," Claire said softly. "She said she was sure I'd find something appropriate." The words landed like stones. Around them, the crowd was silent. Phones were still recording, cameras still flashing. This moment would be everywhere by morning. Vanessa's social destruction, broadcasted live. Nathan stepped forward, already trying to salvage the disaster. "Roman, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding." Roman's eyes shifted to Nathan. And somehow, that was worse than speaking. Nathan stopped mid-sentence, because Roman Devereaux didn't make threats. He made promises, and right now the promise was clear. Claire took Roman's hand and walked away from the crowd. They moved toward the terrace, overlooking the Chicago skyline, leaving chaos behind them. The ballroom erupted the moment they were gone. Conversations exploded. Theories formed. Who was Claire Whitmore? How long had she been married to Roman Devereaux? Why had she been working as a housekeeper? Was this revenge, a setup, a test? Nobody had answers, but everyone had opinions. And Vanessa Holloway stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, drowning in the weight of her own cruelty. Outside on the terrace, the Chicago skyline glittered like broken glass. Claire leaned against the railing, breathing in the cold night air. Roman stood beside her, silent and steady. "You didn't have to come," Claire said quietly. Roman's hand rested lightly against the small of her back. "Yes, I did. I could have handled this alone." "I know." Claire looked up at him. Roman Devereaux, the man Chicago feared, the legend people whispered about in the dark, was looking at her like she was the only real thing in the world. "You should have told me what she was doing to you," Roman said, his voice low. "I wanted to handle it myself." "Why?" Claire exhaled slowly. "Because I needed to know if I could survive without your name protecting me." Roman studied her for a long moment. "And?" "I survived," Claire said. "But I shouldn't have had to." Roman nodded slowly, because that was the truth neither of them could ignore. Claire had proven she was strong enough to endure cruelty, but strength shouldn't be measured by how much pain someone can absorb. It should be measured by what they build after the pain ends. Inside the ballroom, Vanessa finally moved. She pushed through the crowd toward the exit. ignoring the questions, the stares, the cameras. Nathan followed her into the hallway. What the hell just happened in there? Vanessa leaned against the wall, her hands shaking. I didn't know. Didn't know what? Who she was. Nathan grabbed Vanessa's shoulders. Who is she, Vanessa? Vanessa looked up at her husband, shame burning through her chest. Claire Whitmore, she whispered. Evelyn Whitmore's daughter. Nathan's face went pale. Because the Whitmore fashion empire wasn't just wealthy. It was untouchable. Evelyn Whitmore controlled luxury investments worth billions. Her brand dressed royalty. Her influence reached across continents, and Vanessa had spent 7 months treating her daughter like garbage. Oh, God, Nathan whispered. I didn't know, Vanessa repeated, her voice breaking. She was just the housekeeper. But even as she said it, she knew how it sounded. Like cruelty needed justification, like someone's job determined their worth. Like invisibility made abuse acceptable. Ugh. The next morning, Claire woke up in Roman's penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Sunlight spilled across the floor-to-ceiling windows. Roman was already awake, standing near the windows with coffee, staring out at the water. Claire walked over and leaned against his shoulder. It's everywhere, Roman said quietly. Claire didn't need to ask what he meant. By now, every news outlet in Chicago had the story. Every social media platform was flooded with photos. Mystery woman at charity gala. Revealed as fashion heiress. Roman Devereaux's secret wife, stunned Chicago elite socialite. Vanessa Holloway under fire for alleged mistreatment. Claire exhaled slowly. I didn't want it to be like this. What did you want? Claire thought about that for a long moment. I wanted her to see me, she said finally. Not my name, not my status, just me. Roman set down his coffee and turned to face her. She saw you, Claire. She just didn't think you mattered. The words hit harder than Claire expected, because that was the truth. Vanessa didn't mistreat Claire because she was cruel by nature. She mistreated Claire because she believed cruelty toward powerless people didn't count. That dignity was reserved for those with status. That invisibility was permission. And now, the world was watching Vanessa realize how wrong she'd been. 3 days later, Vanessa Holloway sat alone in her penthouse. Nathan was meeting with lawyers. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. Friends, former friends, were distancing themselves publicly. Brands were pulling sponsorships. The charity gala committee had quietly asked her to step down. And somewhere in the city, Claire Whitmore was living her life like none of this had ever happened. Vanessa stared at her phone, scrolling through the photos from the gala. Claire looked radiant, powerful, untouchable. Everything Vanessa had tried to make her feel small for. Her assistant knocked softly on the door. Mrs. Holloway. What? There's someone here to see you. Tell them I'm not. It's Claire Whitmore. Vanessa's heart stopped. Claire stood in the penthouse living room where she had spent 7 months cleaning, scrubbing, erasing her presence. Now she stood there wearing tailored black pants and a silk blouse, looking like she owned the space. Vanessa entered slowly, her face pale, her hands shaking. Why are you here? Claire studied her quietly. Because I need to know something. What? Why were you cruel to me? The question landed like a punch. Vanessa opened her mouth, then stopped. Because the truth sounded uglier out loud. Because you seemed powerless. Because I didn't think you mattered. Because cruelty felt safe when I thought you couldn't fight back. Claire watched the realization move across Vanessa's face. You thought dignity was something people had to earn, Claire said softly. That respect belonged only to those with status. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. For what? For everything. For treating you like I was invisible? Vanessa nodded, shame burning through her chest. Claire stepped closer. The problem isn't that you didn't know who I was, she said quietly. The problem is that you believed someone needed power to deserve respect. The words hung between them like smoke. Vanessa looked around the penthouse. The marble counters Claire had scrubbed, the floors she'd cleaned, the windows she'd polished while Vanessa stood nearby complaining about her. And for the first time in her life, Vanessa saw the cruelty clearly. Not as jokes, not as harmless comments, but as violence. The kind that didn't leave bruises but still destroyed people. What happens now? Vanessa whispered. Claire turned toward the door. That's up to you. And then she was gone, leaving Vanessa alone with the weight of her own reflection. That night, Roman found Claire standing on the penthouse balcony staring out at the city lights. You gave her mercy, he said quietly. I gave her a mirror, Claire corrected. Roman stepped beside her. Some people don't change. I know. So why give her the chance? Claire looked up at him. Because revenge doesn't fix anything. It just makes the world smaller. Roman studied her face. This woman who had walked away from privilege to discover herself, who had endured cruelty to understand humanity, who had chosen awareness over destruction. You're stronger than I am, he said finally. Claire smiled faintly. No, I just measure strength differently. And standing there beneath the Chicago skyline, Roman Devereaux, the man the city feared, the legend people whispered about, realized something he'd never admitted to anyone. Claire Whitmore had never needed his protection. She'd always been the dangerous one. She just chose kindness as her weapon, and that made her unstoppable. 2 weeks after the gala, Claire received the first threat. It arrived in a plain white envelope slipped under the door of Roman's penthouse while they were both asleep. No postage, no return address, just her name written in block letters across the front. Claire found it at 6 in the morning when she went to make coffee. She stood in the kitchen holding the envelope, her heart beating too fast, and knew immediately this wasn't junk mail. Inside was a single photograph. Her mother's design studio in Manhattan, taken from across the street. Recent. No message, no demand, just the photo. A warning. Claire's hands started shaking. Roman appeared in the doorway seconds later, reading her body language before he even saw the envelope. What is it? Claire handed him the photograph without speaking. Roman studied it with cold, clinical precision, the way he looked at problems that needed solving rather than feeling. When did this arrive? Just now. Someone slipped it under the door. Roman walked to the windows overlooking the building entrance 23 floors below. His jaw tightened. Security didn't see anyone? I don't know. Roman pulled out his phone and made a call. His voice was calm, controlled, deadly. Check the hallway footage from the last hour. Someone delivered something to the penthouse. I want their face, their route, and every building they entered in the last 72 hours. He hung up and turned back to Claire. Pack a bag. What? You're leaving Chicago. Claire's spine stiffened. No. This isn't negotiable. I'm not running, Roman. You're not running. You're being smart. Smart would have been not marrying a mafia boss. The words came out sharper than she intended. Roman's eyes darkened. You knew who I was when you said yes. I also knew you'd try to control everything the second things got dangerous. Control? Roman's voice dropped lower. Someone just photographed your mother's studio, Claire. That's not danger. That's a declaration. Claire slammed the envelope onto the counter. Then we deal with it, together. I deal with it. You stay safe. I'm not some fragile thing you need to protect. I know exactly what you are, Roman said quietly. That's why I'm protecting you. The silence between them felt like broken glass. Claire stared at him. This man she'd married knowing full well what his world looked like, knowing that violence followed him like a shadow, knowing that safety was a luxury people like them didn't get to keep. But she'd chosen him anyway, and now he wanted her to hide. If I leave, Claire said slowly, Vanessa wins. Roman's expression didn't change. Vanessa Holloway didn't send this. Then who did? Someone who wants me distracted. The realization hit Claire like cold water. This wasn't about her. This was about Roman. Someone was using her to get to him. Across the city, Vanessa Holloway sat in her therapist's office staring at the wall. She'd been coming here twice a week since the gala. Not because Nathan forced her, because she couldn't sleep anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Claire standing on that staircase glowing beneath the chandeliers while Vanessa's entire world collapsed around her. Tell me what you're feeling right now, Dr. Chen said gently. Vanessa's throat tightened. Shame. Can you be more specific? I can't stop thinking about the things I said to her. Claire Whitmore? Vanessa nodded. Walk me through one moment, one specific memory. Vanessa closed her eyes. She was back in the penthouse hallway. Claire was folding towels, moving quietly, trying to be invisible. And Vanessa had laughed with her friends about how the help never seemed to understand basic instructions. Claire had been standing 3 feet away, listening, saying nothing, and Vanessa had felt powerful in that moment. Now the memory made her sick. I didn't see her as human, Vanessa whispered. Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. Why not? Because she had no power, so I thought she didn't matter. The words tasted like poison. Dr. Chen wrote something in her notebook. Have you tried reaching out to her? She came to see me 2 weeks ago. What happened? Vanessa's hands twisted together in her lap. She asked me why I was cruel to her. And what did you say? Nothing. I couldn't even answer. Why not? Because the truth made me sound like a monster. Dr. Chen studied her quietly. Vanessa, recognizing harmful behavior is the first step, but recognition without action is just performance. Vanessa looked up sharply. What does that mean? It means feeling guilty doesn't undo the damage. What are you going to do differently? Vanessa opened her mouth, then stopped, because she didn't have an answer. Guilt felt like penance, like suffering meant change. But Dr. Chen was right. Feeling bad wasn't the same as being better. Kit. That afternoon, Claire met her mother at a private restaurant in downtown Chicago. Evelyn Whitmore sat near the windows overlooking the river, dressed in black silk with her signature silver jewelry. She looked exactly like what she was, an icon, a legend, a woman who'd built an empire from fabric and vision. Claire slid into the seat across from her. Evelyn studied her daughter's face with sharp, knowing eyes. You look tired. I'm fine. That's what people say when they're lying. Claire exhaled slowly and slid the photograph across the table. Evelyn picked it up, her expression unchanging. When did this arrive? This morning. Does Roman know? Yes. What did he say? That I should leave Chicago. Evelyn set down the photograph carefully. He's not wrong. Claire's jaw tightened. You too? Darling, someone photographed my studio. That's not a prank. That's a threat. I know what it is. Then why are you still here? Claire leaned forward, her voice low and sharp. Because I'm tired of running. I spent 7 months hiding from my own life because I thought privilege made me unworthy of anything real. I'm not doing that anymore. Evelyn's expression softened slightly. This isn't about privilege, Claire. This is about survival. No, this is about whether I let fear control my decisions. Fear keeps people alive. So does courage. Evelyn studied her daughter for a long moment. Claire had always been the gentle one, the thoughtful one, the daughter who preferred sketchbooks to boardrooms, who cried at fashion shows because beauty moved her, who believed kindness could change the world. But something had shifted. The woman sitting across from Evelyn now looked sharp, focused, unmovable. Marriage to Roman Devereaux had done that, or maybe it had just revealed what was already there. What does Roman want you to do? Evelyn asked carefully. Leave, hide, let him handle everything. And what do you want? Claire's eyes met her mother's. I want to stop being protected and start protecting myself. Evelyn nodded slowly. Then I'll help you. Roman spent the afternoon in a warehouse on the south side of Chicago where problems got solved quietly. 3 men sat tied to chairs beneath flickering industrial lights. They worked for the Volkov family, a Russian crime syndicate that had been testing Roman's territory for months. Marco, Roman's second-in-command, stood nearby holding a tablet displaying security footage. These 3 were spotted near your building this morning, Marco said, 2 blocks away, waiting. Roman studied the men with cold patience. Who sent you? Silence. Roman walked closer. I'm going to ask one more time. Who sent you? The man in the center, mid-30s, scarred jaw, dead eyes, finally spoke. Dmitry Volkov wants a meeting. Roman's expression didn't change. Dmitry knows how to contact me. He wants neutral ground. Then he should have asked instead of threatening my wife. The man smiled slightly, blood on his teeth. That wasn't a threat. That was an introduction. Roman's hand moved so fast the man didn't see it coming. The punch landed clean, snapping the man's head sideways. When he looked up again, the smile was gone. "Tell Dmitri," Roman said quietly, "that if he wants a meeting, he comes to me, alone, unarmed. And if anyone goes near my wife again, I'll burn everything he's built to the ground." He turned and walked toward the exit. Marco followed. "You really think Volkov will come alone?" "No." "Then what's the play?" Roman stopped at the warehouse door, staring out at the Chicago skyline. "We make him think he has leverage." "Does he?" Roman's jaw tightened, because the answer was yes. Dmitri Volkov had exactly one piece of leverage: Claire. That evening, Claire returned to the penthouse to find Roman standing at the windows with a drink in his hand. She knew that posture: rigid, controlled, holding something back. "What happened?" she asked. "Dmitri Volkov wants a meeting." Claire set down her bag slowly. She'd heard that name before. Russian crime family, dangerous, expanding into territories they didn't own. "What does he want?" "Control." "Of what?" Roman turned to face her. "Everything I've built." Claire crossed the room and stood beside him. "Can you stop him?" "Yes." "Then what's the problem?" Roman's eyes met hers. "He's using you as bait." The words hung in the air like smoke. Claire felt something cold settle in her chest. "The photograph this morning was from Volkov, a message. He wants me distracted." "So send me away. Isn't that what you wanted?" Roman's jaw tightened. "I don't want you anywhere near this." "I'm already near it, Roman. I married you." "You married me, not my enemies." "They're the same thing." Roman set down his drink carefully, like he was afraid of what would happen if his hands weren't occupied. "Claire, listen to me very carefully. Dmitri Volkov doesn't negotiate. He destroys. And if he thinks hurting you will break me, he won't hesitate. Then we don't give him the chance." "How?" Claire stepped closer, her voice steady. "I stay visible. I keep living my life. I don't hide." "That's insane." "No, hiding is what he expects. Staying means I'm not a weakness. I'm a statement." Roman stared at her like she'd just suggested walking into fire. "You realize what you're saying?" "I'm saying I refuse to be the reason you lose control." "You're saying you want to be a target." "I'm saying I already am." The truth landed between them like a blade. Roman exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair, the only sign of stress he ever allowed himself. "I can't protect you if you won't let me." "I'm not asking you to protect me," Claire said quietly. "I'm asking you to trust me." Roman looked at her, this woman who had walked away from privilege to discover herself, who had endured cruelty to understand humanity, who refused to be invisible even when visibility meant danger. And he realized something terrifying. Claire wasn't fragile. She was fearless, and that made her the most dangerous person in the room. But 3 days later, Claire attended a fashion industry brunch at the Drake Hotel. Alone. Roman had argued against it for 2 hours. Marco had called it a tactical nightmare. Claire went anyway. The event was packed. Designers, editors, influencers, old money socialites pretending to care about fashion while really caring about being seen. Claire moved through the crowd wearing a tailored white suit that made her look untouchable. Cameras followed her everywhere. Conversations paused when she passed. People whispered. Not cruelly this time, carefully. Because Claire Whitmore wasn't just Roman Devereaux's wife anymore. She was becoming something else, a figure people couldn't ignore. Near the champagne bar, Claire ran into someone unexpected, Vanessa Holloway. They saw each other at the same moment. The air between them went cold. Vanessa looked thinner, tired, like guilt had been eating her from the inside. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Vanessa stepped forward. "Can we talk?" Claire studied her carefully. "About what?" "Everything." They found a quiet corner near the windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. Vanessa stood with her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something together. "I've been seeing a therapist," she said quietly. Claire waited. "She asked me what I was going to do differently, and I didn't have an answer." "Do you have one now?" Vanessa looked directly at Claire, her eyes red-rimmed. I want to do something real, something that matters. I just don't know how. Claire sipped her champagne slowly, watching Vanessa carefully. This wasn't performance. This was real discomfort, real shame, real awareness. Guilt doesn't undo damage, Claire said finally. Action does. I know. Then stop apologizing and start building. Vanessa blinked. Building what? Something that makes the world better than the one you helped create. The words hit Vanessa like stones. But Claire wasn't being cruel, she was being honest. And honesty was harder to absorb than cruelty. I don't know where to start, Vanessa whispered. Yes, you do. Claire set down her glass and turned to face Vanessa fully. You spent 7 months watching me clean your home. You saw how domestic workers are treated. You understand that world now, so do something with that understanding. Vanessa's throat tightened, because Claire was right. She'd spent years ignoring the people who cleaned her homes, raised her children, cooked her meals. She'd treated them like furniture, and now she had a choice: stay guilty or get useful. There's a nonprofit downtown, Claire continued. They advocate for domestic workers' rights, better pay, safer conditions, legal protections. You want me to work with them? I want you to fund them. Use your name, your platform, your resources. Stop apologizing and start fixing. Vanessa stared at Claire, stunned, because this wasn't forgiveness. This was something harder. Accountability with a roadmap. Why would you help me? Vanessa asked, her voice breaking. Claire looked at her for a long moment. Because revenge is easy. Building something better is hard, and I'd rather live in a world where people choose the hard thing. Then Claire walked away, leaving Vanessa standing alone near the windows with the weight of possibility pressing down on her chest. That night, Roman found Claire on the penthouse balcony staring out at the city. You talked to Vanessa. How did you know? Marco saw you together at the brunch. Claire smiled faintly. You're having me followed? Protected. There's a difference. Not to me. Claire turned to face him. Roman looked exhausted. His tie was loose, his sleeves rolled up, his jaw tight with tension he wouldn't release. Dmitri responded, he said quietly. And? He wants to meet tomorrow night. Claire's heart skipped. Where? The old factory district, neutral ground. Are you going? I have to. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Roman, Claire, this isn't a negotiation. She stepped closer, her voice steady but sharp. You told me Volkov is using me as bait. If I stay hidden, I'm still bait. But if I show up, I take away his leverage. Or you give him a target. I'm already a target. Roman's hands clenched into fists. If something happens to you, then you'll handle it, like you always do. That's not good enough. Claire grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. Roman, I married you knowing exactly what your world looks like. I'm not afraid of it. I'm afraid of becoming someone who hides from it. Roman stared at her, torn between protection and respect. Because Claire was right, hiding her wouldn't keep her safe. It would just make her invisible again. And invisibility was what started all of this. If you come tomorrow, Roman said slowly, you follow my lead. No improvising, no heroics. Deal. And if I tell you to run, you run. Claire hesitated. Claire. Fine. If you tell me to run, I'll run. Roman pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. I can't lose you. You won't. But even as she said it, Claire wondered if that was a promise she could actually keep. The next evening, they drove to the factory district in separate cars. Roman insisted. If things go wrong, he'd said that morning, you need an exit that's not connected to me. Claire sat in the back of an SUV with Marco driving and 2 armed security guards flanking her. The factories loomed ahead like dead giants, abandoned warehouses, broken windows, rusted metal skeletons against the darkening sky. They parked beside Roman's car near an old textile mill. Claire stepped out into the cold. Roman was already waiting, dressed in black, his expression unreadable. He walked over and spoke quietly. Stay behind me. Don't speak unless I tell you to, and if shooting starts, Marco gets you out immediately. Claire nodded. Her heart was hammering, but her hands were steady. They walked toward the mill entrance together. Inside, the space was vast and empty. Concrete floors, exposed beams, shadows pooling in corners where light didn't reach. And standing in the center of the room was Dmitry Volkov. Tall, pale, mid-40s, with sharp Slavic features and eyes like frozen water. He wasn't alone. 6 men stood behind him, all armed, all watching. Roman stopped 10 feet away. Dmitry smiled. Roman Devereaux. Finally! His accent was thick, his English precise. Roman said nothing. Dmitry's eyes shifted to Claire. And you brought your beautiful wife. How trusting. Claire felt every instinct scream at her to step back, but she stayed still. Roman's voice was calm and cold. You wanted a meeting. Talk. Dmitry circled slowly, hands clasped behind his back. I've been very patient, Roman. Watching you control this city like it belongs to you, but empires don't last forever. Get to the point. The point is simple. I want what you have. Territory, influence, respect. Then earn it. Dmitry stopped walking. I'd rather take it. The tension in the room thickened. Roman didn't move. You're not strong enough. Dmitry's smile faded. Perhaps not alone. But I'm not alone. He nodded toward the shadows. More men appeared. 12, 15, 20. All armed. All surrounding them. Claire's breath caught. Marco's hand moved toward his weapon. Roman raised one hand slightly. A signal. Wait. Dmitry stepped closer, his voice dropping. I don't want to kill you, Roman. I want you to kneel. That's not going to happen. Then I'll make you. Dmitry's eyes slid to Claire again, and suddenly Claire understood. This wasn't about territory. This was about breaking Roman, and Dmitry thought hurting her was the way to do it. You think she's your weakness, Claire said quietly. Every head turned toward her. Roman's jaw tightened. Dmitry raised an eyebrow. I think, Dmitry said slowly, that men like Roman Devereaux don't love often. And when they do, love becomes liability. Claire stepped forward. Roman's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. Claire! She pulled free gently and kept walking until she stood directly in front of Dmitry Volkov. The Russian crime lord looked amused. Brave, he said, or stupid. Neither, Claire said, just tired of being used as leverage. Dmitry studied her face. You think you're not leverage? I think you're betting everything on the assumption that Roman will break if you hurt me. He will, Claire smiled faintly. Then you don't know him at all. Dmitry's expression darkened. Careful, Mrs. Devereaux. You want to take Roman's empire? Claire continued, her voice steady. Go ahead. Fight him. Test him. But don't pretend threatening me gives you power. All it does is prove you're not strong enough to face him directly. The silence in the warehouse became suffocating. Dmitry's men shifted uncomfortably. Roman stood frozen, watching Claire dismantle Dmitry's strategy with nothing but words. Dmitry's hand moved toward the gun at his waist. You're making a mistake. No, Claire said quietly. You are. Then she turned and walked back toward Roman. Every gun in the room tracked her movement, but nobody fired. Because Dmitry Volkov had just been challenged by an unarmed woman in front of his entire crew. And if he killed her now, it would look like weakness, like she'd gotten under his skin. Claire reached Roman's side. His hand found hers immediately, gripping tight. Dmitry's voice cut through the silence. This isn't over. Roman finally spoke, his voice like gravel. Yes, it is. Then he turned and walked toward the exit with Claire beside him, Marco and the security team forming a wall behind them. Nobody stopped them. They made it to the cars. Engines started, doors slammed, and as they pulled away from the factory district, Claire realized something terrifying. She'd just declared war on the most dangerous man in Chicago, and there was no taking it back. Roman stared at her from across the SUV, his expression unreadable. What the hell was that? Claire's hands were shaking now, adrenaline crashing through her system. I don't know. You just called out a Mafia boss in front of his crew. I know. Do you have any idea what you just did? Roman's voice was quiet, but Claire heard the fury beneath it. They were back at the penthouse. Marco had swept the entire floor twice. Guards stationed at every entrance, windows locked, security feeds running on loop. Claire stood near the kitchen counter, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. I called his bluff. You provoked him. He was going to hurt me anyway, Roman. At least now he knows I'm not afraid. Roman slammed his hand down on the counter. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. Claire flinched. Roman never lost control. Never. You think this is about courage? His voice was raw now, stripped of the cold precision he usually carried. You just embarrassed Dmitry Volkov in front of his entire crew. Men like him don't forgive that. They retaliate. Then let him retaliate against me, not you. It doesn't work that way. Why not? Because hurting you is retaliating against me. The words hung between them like smoke. Claire stared at him, her chest tight. So, what do you want me to do, Roman? Apologize? Hide? Pretend I'm helpless so he feels powerful? I want you to stop acting like you're invincible. I'm not acting like anything. I'm refusing to be your weakness. Roman's jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jump. You're not my weakness, Claire. You're my blind spot, and Dmitry knows it. Claire felt something crack inside her chest. Because Roman was right. She'd walked into that warehouse thinking she was protecting him, but all she'd done was paint a bigger target on her own back. And now Dmitry Volkov had exactly what he wanted. Leverage. Tasik. Across the city, inside a dimly lit office above a Russian nightclub, Dmitry Volkov sat behind a desk made of black oak and poured himself vodka. His second-in-command, Alexei, stood near the window. She made you look weak, Alexei said carefully. Dmitry's hand tightened around the glass. I'm aware. The men are talking. Let them talk. They're saying Roman Devereux's wife has more spine than... Dmitry threw the glass. It shattered against the wall behind Alexei's head. The younger man didn't flinch. Dmitry stood slowly, his face calm again, dangerous again. Claire Whitmore thinks words make her powerful, he said quietly. Let's show her what real power looks like. What do you want me to do? Dmitry walked to the window and stared down at the Chicago streets below. Find her mother. Alexei's eyes widened slightly. Evelyn Whitmore? Yes. She's in New York. Not anymore. Dmitry turned, his expression cold and precise. Evelyn Whitmore flew into Chicago this morning. She's staying at the Peninsula Hotel, room 2407. Alexei's throat tightened. How do you... Because I've been watching this family for months. Dmitry's voice was soft, almost gentle. Roman thinks he's protecting Claire. Claire thinks she's protecting Roman. But neither of them is watching the people around them. What do you want us to do? Dmitry smiled. Send Mrs. Whitmore an invitation. The next morning, Claire woke to an empty bed. Roman was gone. No note, no text, just silence. She found Marco in the living room staring at security feeds. Where is he? Marco didn't look up. Meeting? With who? People who can help. Claire crossed her arms. That's not an answer. Marco finally turned to face her, and she saw something in his expression she'd never seen before. Fear. Marco, what's going on? He hesitated, then pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. Claire's blood went cold. It was her mother. Walking into the Peninsula Hotel, taken yesterday. When did this happen? Last night. We didn't know she was in Chicago until Volkov's people started following her. Claire's hands started shaking. Where's Roman? Trying to get her out before Volkov makes a move. I'm going with him. No. Marco, what? Roman's orders, you stay here, protected. Claire felt rage explode through her chest. My mother is in danger because of me, and you expect me to sit here? Your mother is in danger because Volkov wants leverage. If you go running after her, you give him exactly what he wants. I don't care. Roman does. The words landed like stones. Claire stared at Marco, breathing hard, trying to think through the panic clawing at her throat. Her mother. Evelyn Whitmore had flown to Chicago to help her, and now she was bait. Claire grabbed her phone and dialed Roman. It went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. She turned back to Marco. Take me to her. I can't do that. Then I'll go myself. She headed toward the door. Marco stepped in front of her. Claire, if you leave this penthouse, you're on your own. Roman gave me one job, keep you safe. I'm not failing him. Then come with me. I can't protect you out there. I'm not asking you to protect me. I'm asking you to help me save my mother. Marco stared at her, torn between orders and instinct. Then his phone buzzed. He looked down at the screen and his face went pale. What? Marco turned the phone toward her. It was a video message from an unknown number. Claire hit play. The screen showed a hotel room. Expensive, clean, empty. Then the camera panned left, and there was Evelyn Whitmore, sitting in a chair, hands tied behind her back, tape across her mouth, eyes wide with fury, not fear. A voice spoke off camera, Dimitri's voice, smooth and cold. Mrs. Devereaux, I believe you wanted to protect your husband. Admirable. But you forgot to protect the people you love. The camera moved closer to Evelyn's face. Your mother will remain comfortable as long as you follow instructions. Fail, and I'll send her back to you in pieces. The screen went black. Then text appeared. Come alone. Warehouse on South Morgan. 1 hour, no Roman, no security, or she dies. Claire's legs buckled. Marco caught her before she hit the floor. We need to tell Roman, he said urgently. No, Claire, if we tell him, he'll come. And if he comes, they'll kill her. They'll kill her anyway. Not if I give them what they want. Marco grabbed her shoulders. You can't trade yourself for your mother. That's exactly what Volkov wants. I know. Then why? Because my mother came to Chicago to help me. And I'm not letting her die because I was stupid enough to provoke a mafia boss. Claire pulled free and walked toward the bedroom. Marco followed. What are you doing? Getting ready. For what? Claire opened the closet and pulled out a black jacket, jeans, boots. To end this, itetokum. 45 minutes later, Claire stood outside the warehouse on South Morgan. The building looked abandoned. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, rusted metal doors hanging off hinges. She'd left Marco unconscious in the penthouse, drugged his coffee with sleeping pills she'd found in Roman's medicine cabinet. He'd wake up in an hour. By then, this would be over, one way or another. Claire pushed through the metal door. Inside, the warehouse was dark and vast. Shadows pooled in corners. Her footsteps echoed against concrete. Mrs. Devereaux! Dimitri's voice came from somewhere above. Claire looked up. He stood on a catwalk overlooking the warehouse floor, flanked by armed men. You came alone. How refreshing. Where's my mother? Dimitri gestured to the left. Claire turned. Evelyn sat tied to a chair in the center of the space, tape still across her mouth, eyes burning with fury when she saw her daughter. Claire started toward her. Stop. She froze. Dimitri descended a metal staircase slowly, his footsteps ringing through the silence. He reached the warehouse floor and circled Claire like a predator studying prey. Do you know why I chose you? He asked softly. Claire said nothing. Because Roman Devereaux is untouchable. Physically, financially, strategically, the man has no weaknesses. Except one. He stopped in front of her. You. Claire's hands clenched into fists. Let my mother go. You have me. That's what you wanted. True, but I'm curious about something. What? Does Roman know you're here? Claire hesitated. Dimitri smiled. He doesn't, which means you came alone, unarmed, with no backup plan. Either you're incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Both, Claire said quietly. Dimitri laughed. Then his expression went cold. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Roman. Tell him you're here. Tell him to come alone, unarmed, or I kill your mother in front of you. He won't come. Yes, he will, because he loves you more than he loves control, and that makes him vulnerable. Claire's heart hammered. This was the trap. Get her here. Use her to draw Roman out. Kill them both. And if I refuse? Dimitri pulled out a gun and pointed it at Evelyn's head. Then I start with her. Claire's breath stopped. Evelyn's eyes met hers across the warehouse, sharp, furious, unafraid. And somehow, that made it worse. Because her mother wasn't scared. She was just disappointed. Disappointed that Claire had walked into this. Disappointed that Claire had chosen emotion over strategy. Disappointed that after everything, Claire was still trying to save people at the expense of herself. Make the call, Dimitri said softly. Claire pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She dialed Roman's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then Roman's voice, sharp and panicked. "Claire, where the hell are you?" "I'm sorry." Silence. Then Roman's voice went cold. "What did you do?" "I'm at the warehouse, South Morgan." "Jesus Christ." "He has my mother, Roman. He's going to kill her unless you come. Alone. Unarmed." "Claire, listen to me very carefully." "I'm sorry," she whispered again. Then she hung up. Dmitri smiled. "Good girl." Got. 17 minutes later, the warehouse doors exploded open. Roman Devereaux walked in alone. No Marco, no security, no weapons visible. Just him. Dmitri's men raised their guns immediately. Roman ignored them. His eyes locked on Claire, standing 20 feet away, pale and shaking. Then his gaze shifted to Evelyn tied to the chair. Then to Dmitri. "Let them go." Dmitri laughed. "You don't give orders here, Roman. Let them go, and you and I settle this." "Settle this? You think this is about territory?" Dmitri circled slowly. "This is about proving that you're not untouchable, that you bleed like everyone else." Roman's expression didn't change. "You already proved that." "How?" "I'm here, alone. That's the vulnerability you wanted." Dmitri stopped walking, because Roman was right. He'd won. Roman Devereaux, the most feared man in Chicago, had just walked into a trap unarmed because of a woman. "You love her," Dmitri said slowly, studying Roman's face. "Yes." "Enough to die for her?" "Yes." Dmitri nodded. Then he raised his gun and shot Roman in the chest. The sound was deafening. Claire screamed. Roman staggered backward, blood spreading across his white shirt, and collapsed onto the concrete floor. Claire ran toward him. Dmitri's men grabbed her before she reached him. She fought, screaming, clawing, but they held her back as Roman lay bleeding on the warehouse floor, gasping for air, his eyes locked on hers. "No, no, no, no!" Dmitri walked over and stood above Roman. "You should have stayed away from my territory." Roman coughed blood. "You should have," he gasped, "checked the doors." Dmitri frowned. Then he heard it. Sirens. Dozens of them, closing in fast. Dmitri's face went pale. He spun toward the exits. Police cars surrounded the building. Flashing lights everywhere. Loudspeakers. "This is CPD. The building is surrounded. Come out with your hands up." Dmitri turned back to Roman, fury contorting his face. "You called the cops?" Roman smiled through the blood. "No, she did." Dmitri's eyes snapped to Claire. She stood between two of his men, phone still in her hand, emergency call connected. She dialed 911 the moment she walked into the warehouse. Left the line open. Everything Dmitri said, every threat, every confession, recorded. Broadcast to police dispatch. Dmitri's entire operation just destroyed itself. "You..." The doors burst open. SWAT poured in. "Drop your weapons! Hands in the air!" Dmitri's men scattered. Gunfire erupted. Claire hit the ground, arms over her head. The warehouse turned into chaos, shouting, flashing lights, bodies moving everywhere. Then hands grabbed her, gentle hands. "Claire, stay down!" It was Marco. He'd woken up early, tracked her phone, called in every favor Roman had with CPD. He dragged her toward the exit as police swarmed Dmitri's men. Behind them, paramedics surrounded Roman. Claire twisted in Marco's grip, desperate to see him. "Roman!" His eyes found hers across the chaos. Blood soaking through his shirt, paramedics pressing gauze against the wound. But he was alive, conscious, staring at her like she was the only real thing in the world. Then they loaded him onto a stretcher and carried him out. Marco pulled Claire after them. Behind them, Dmitri Volkov was being forced to his knees, hands cuffed behind his back, face twisted with rage. He'd lost. Roman had won, but the cost was written in blood across the warehouse floor. 6 hours later, Claire sat in a hospital waiting room staring at her hands. They were still shaking, still covered in Roman's blood. Marco sat beside her, silent. Evelyn had been treated for minor injuries and released. She'd gone back to the hotel to shower and change, promising to return. But Claire couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. The doctor said Roman would survive. The bullet missed his heart by inches, collapsed lung, broken ribs, massive blood loss. But he'd live. Claire pressed her hands against her face and tried not to fall apart. She'd almost gotten him killed. She'd walked into Dimitri's trap thinking she was being brave, but all she'd done was force Roman to choose between her life and his own. And he'd chosen hers, like she knew he would, like Dimitri knew he would. Claire. She looked up. A doctor stood in the doorway. He's asking for you. Roman lay in a hospital bed surrounded by machines, tubes running into his arms, bandages wrapped around his chest. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, but his eyes were sharp when Claire walked in. She stopped in the doorway, afraid to get closer, afraid of what she'd see in his expression: anger, blame, regret. But Roman just looked at her. Come here. Claire's legs felt like concrete, but she forced herself forward. She reached the bed and stood there, useless, broken. I'm sorry. Roman's hand found hers. His grip was weak but steady. You saved your mother. I almost got you killed. You outsmarted Dmitri Volkov with a 911 call. That's not almost getting me killed. That's tactical genius. Claire's throat tightened. You got shot because of me. I got shot because I walked into a warehouse knowing exactly what would happen. Then why did you come? Roman stared at her for a long moment. Because some things are worth dying for. The words broke something inside Claire. She collapsed into the chair beside his bed, her head in her hands, trying not to sob. Roman's fingers threaded through her hair gently. Claire, look at me. She lifted her head. His eyes were steady, calm, unmistakable. You are not my weakness. You're my purpose. There's a difference. I don't understand. Weakness makes you vulnerable. Purpose makes you dangerous. And you, Claire Whitmore, are the most dangerous thing that ever happened to me. Claire stared at him, tears streaming down her face. I thought I was protecting you. You were, just not the way you thought. He pulled her closer, wincing at the pain but refusing to let go. Dimitri wanted me isolated, alone, making decisions based on fear. But you refused to be a victim. You refused to hide, and that broke his entire strategy. He still almost killed you. Almost doesn't count. Claire laughed through the tears, broken and exhausted. Roman's hand cupped her face. We won, Claire. Dimitri's in custody, his operations dismantled. The Volkov family is done in Chicago. At what cost? Roman's thumb traced her cheekbone. The only cost that matters. We survived. Claire leaned into his touch, breathing him in, trying to believe that this was real, that they'd made it through, that the nightmare was over. But deep down, she knew something had changed. She'd walked into that warehouse believing she could protect the people she loved through sacrifice. She'd learned the hard way that sacrifice without strategy was just suicide with good intentions. And if she wanted to survive Roman's world, if she wanted to be his partner instead of his liability, she'd have to become something. She'd have to become something else. The thought settled into Claire's chest like lead as she sat beside Roman's hospital bed watching him sleep. 3 days since the shooting. 3 days of police statements, lawyer meetings, security debriefs. 3 days of watching Roman fight through pain he'd never admit he was feeling. And 3 days of Claire realizing that surviving Roman's world meant more than just refusing to hide. It meant learning to fight. Marco appeared in the doorway holding coffee. You should eat something. Claire shook her head. Not hungry. Claire, I'm fine, Marco. But she wasn't fine. Her hands still shook when she closed her eyes. She still saw Roman collapsing, blood spreading across concrete. She still heard Dimitri's voice. You love her, enough to die for her? And Roman's answer, immediate and final. Yes. Marco set the coffee down on the table beside her. The Volkov family is making moves. Claire looked up sharply. What kind of moves? Legal. Dimitri's lawyers are claiming entrapment, saying you lured him into that warehouse deliberately. I did. But they're spinning it as premeditated criminal conspiracy, trying to get the charges dropped. Claire's jaw tightened. Can they? Marco hesitated. Maybe. Dimitri has connections, judges on payroll, prosecutors who owe favors. So he might walk. It's possible. Claire stood abruptly, her chair scraping against tile. Then we make sure he doesn't. Claire, you've done enough. No, I haven't. She grabbed her jacket from the chair. Where are you going? To finish what I started. The law offices of Brennan and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower overlooking the Chicago River. Claire walked through the revolving doors wearing a black suit her mother had sent over, her hair pulled back, her expression cold and controlled. She looked exactly like what she was. Evelyn Whitmore's daughter, wealth wrapped in silk, power-wearing heels. The receptionist looked up nervously. Do you have an appointment? No, but David Brennan will see me. I'm sorry, but Mr. Brennan is in meetings all... Claire leaned forward slightly. Tell him Claire Devereaux is here, and if he doesn't see me in the next 5 minutes, I'll make one phone call that ends his career. The receptionist's face went pale. She picked up the phone. 2 minutes later, Claire sat across from David Brennan in his corner office. Brennan was mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who defended monsters for 7-figure retainers. He smiled like they were old friends. Mrs. Devereaux, what a pleasant surprise. Cut the performance, David. His smile faded slightly. I'm not sure what You're defending Dmitry Volkov, claiming I entrapped him, trying to get attempted murder charges dismissed. Brennan leaned back in his chair. My client has rights. Your client tried to kill my husband. Allegedly. Claire's hands clenched in her lap. There's nothing alleged about a bullet through his chest. The circumstances surrounding that shooting are complex. Complex. Claire stood slowly and walked to the windows overlooking the river. You know what's complex, David? The paper trail connecting you to 3 offshore accounts funded by Russian oligarchs with ties to organized crime. The wire transfers, the shell corporations, all of it sitting in a file on my lawyer's desk right now. Brennan's face went rigid. That's privileged information. Not anymore. Claire turned to face him. Drop the entrapment defense. Convince Volkov to take a plea deal. Or I release everything. You're bluffing. Try me. Brennan stared at her, sweat forming along his hairline, because Claire Whitmore had just walked into his office and threatened to destroy him with the same calm precision her husband used to dismantle enemies. And Brennan realized something terrifying. She wasn't bluffing. Even if I wanted to, Brennan said carefully. Dmitry won't take a plea. He thinks he can beat this. Then change his mind. How? Claire pulled out her phone and set it on Brennan's desk. On the screen was a photograph. Dmitry Volkov, meeting with a federal informant 3 months ago. Brennan's eyes widened. Where did you get this? Doesn't matter. What matters is that if this photo reaches the Volkov family, Dmitry's dead within 48 hours. His own people will kill him for being a snitch. He's not. I don't care if it's real or fabricated. Neither will they. Doubt is enough. Brennan stared at the photograph, his hands shaking slightly. You'd destroy him. To protect my family? Without hesitation. The words hung in the air like smoke. Brennan looked up at Claire, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not as Roman Devereaux's wife, not as Evelyn Whitmore's daughter, but as something else entirely. Someone who'd learned that mercy was a luxury and leverage was survival. I'll talk to him, Brennan said quietly. You have 24 hours. Claire picked up her phone and walked toward the door. Mrs. Devereaux? She stopped. For what it's worth, Brennan said, I believe you about the warehouse, about everything. Dmitry Volkov is exactly what you say he is. Then why defend him? Brennan's face went cold. Because monsters pay better than saints. Claire studied him for a long moment. That's the difference between us, David. I don't get paid to fight monsters. I just refuse to let them win. Then she walked out, leaving Brennan alone with the wreckage of his own choices. Check. That night, Claire returned to the hospital to find Roman awake and arguing with his doctor. I'm fine. Mr. Devereaux, you were shot 3 days ago, and I'm still breathing. Release me. You need at least another week of, I'll recover at home. The doctor looked at Claire desperately. Please tell your husband he's being unreasonable. Claire crossed her arms. He's always unreasonable. That's why I married him. Roman smiled slightly. The doctor sighed and left, muttering about liability waivers. Claire sat on the edge of Roman's bed. You can't leave yet. Yes, I can. Roman, Dmitry's lawyers are making moves. I need to be visible, strong. If I stay here looking weak, every crew in Chicago will test me. You got shot. Nobody expects you to. They expect exactly that. Weakness invites aggression. I won't give them the opening. Claire stared at him, frustrated and terrified. Because Roman was right. His world didn't allow recovery. It demanded strength even when strength was impossible. I talked to Brennan, she said quietly. Roman's eyes sharpened. What did you say? That he has 24 hours to convince Volkov to take a plea, or I release everything I have on him. What do you have on him? Offshore accounts, wire transfers, enough to end his career. Roman studied her face. You're bluffing. Mostly. Mostly? Claire pulled out her phone and showed him the photograph of Dmitri with the federal informant. Roman stared at it. Is this real? Does it matter? Roman's expression shifted, surprise, then something close to pride. You fabricated evidence. I used leverage. That's a federal crime, Claire. So is attempted murder. Roman laughed, then winced at the pain in his chest. Jesus, you really did learn from me. No, I learned from watching you almost die because I was stupid enough to think sacrifice mattered more than strategy. Claire stood and walked to the windows. I can't be your weakness anymore, Roman. I can't be the reason you make decisions that get you killed. You're not. Yes, I am. Dmitri knew it. You knew it. Everyone knows it. She turned to face him. So I'm done being protected. I'm done hiding. If I'm going to survive your world, I need to stop acting like a victim and start acting like a threat. Roman stared at her, something unreadable moving across his face. You're serious. Yes. You want to be involved in everything. Yes. Claire, once you cross that line, you can't uncross it. You'll become exactly what people fear. Good. The word landed like a stone. Roman pushed himself upright, ignoring the pain, and reached for her hand. Are you sure? Claire's fingers threaded through his. I'm sure that I love you, and I'm sure that love in your world means learning to fight instead of just surviving. So yes, I'm sure. Roman pulled her closer until their foreheads touched. Then we do this together. Together. We'll see. 22 hours later, David Brennan called. Dmitri took the plea. Claire exhaled slowly, relief flooding through her. What are the terms? 20 years, no parole, federal supermax. He'll never see Chicago again. And the entrapment defense? Dropped completely. Claire closed her eyes. Thank you, David. Don't thank me. You terrified me into doing the right thing. He hung up. Claire set down her phone and walked into the living room where Roman sat reviewing security reports despite the bandages still wrapped around his chest. It's done. Roman looked up. Volkov? 20 years. Federal prison. He's finished. Roman leaned back against the couch, something like satisfaction crossing his face. You did that. We did that. No, Claire. You walked into Brennan's office alone and destroyed Dmitri Volkov's defense with nothing but leverage and nerve. That was all you. Claire sat beside him. I learned from the best. Roman's arm wrapped around her shoulders, careful of his injuries. You're terrifying, you know that? Good. Maybe now people will stop using me as bait. Roman smiled, but the smile faded when his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his face went cold. What? Marco just sent footage from the South Docks. He pulled up the video. It showed a shipping container being loaded onto a cargo ship. Routine. Except for the men surrounding it. Russians. Volkov family soldiers. They're moving something, Roman said quietly. What? I don't know, but they're doing it fast, like they're evacuating. Claire leaned closer, studying the footage. Dmitri's in custody. Why would they evacuate? Roman's jaw tightened. Because someone else is taking over. The realization hit them both simultaneously. Dmitri wasn't the head of the Volkov operation. He was just the face. Someone else had been pulling strings the entire time. And now, with Dmitri gone, that someone was stepping into the light. Roman's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Devereaux. A woman's voice came through the line, smooth and cold. Hello, Roman. Roman's face went pale. Katya. Claire's heart stopped. because she knew that name. Katya Volkov, Dmitri's sister, the one nobody talked about because she was worse than her brother in every way that mattered. Katya's voice was almost gentle. Dmitri was always too emotional, too impulsive. I told him not to involve himself personally, but he wanted revenge, and now he's locked away for 20 years. What do you want? The same thing he wanted, your territory, your power, your complete destruction. You won't get it. Katya laughed. Oh, Roman, I already have it. The line went dead. Roman stared at the phone, his face unreadable. Claire grabbed his arm. What did she mean? I don't know. Roman, his phone buzzed again, a text message from Katya, just one word and an address. Checkmate, followed by the Whitmore Estate, Manhattan. Claire's blood ran cold. Oh, God! Roman was already moving, grabbing his jacket despite the pain in his chest. Marco, get the plane ready! Marco appeared in the doorway. What's happening? Katya Volkov just made her move. On who? Claire's voice was barely a whisper. My mother. The private jet touched down at Teterboro Airport 4 hours later. Roman had made calls during the flight. Security teams, police contacts, anyone who could reach the Whitmore estate before they did. But every call went the same way. No answer. Radio silence. Like the entire estate had gone dark. Claire sat rigid in her seat, hands clenched so tight her knuckles were white. She's okay, Roman said quietly. Your mother is smart. She'll have protocols. Protocols didn't stop Dmitri from taking her in Chicago. Dmitri was improvising, Katya plans, which means she wants something. What? You. The word hung in the air. Claire looked at Roman. This whole thing, everything with Dmitri, the warehouse, the shooting, it was all set up. Yes. Katya let her brother fail so she could take over. Yes. And now she has my mother. Roman's hand found hers. We'll get her back. How? By giving Katya what she wants. Me? No, something better. Claire stared at him. What's better than me? Roman's eyes went cold. Everything I've built. The Whitmore Estates sat on 12 acres overlooking the Hudson River. Security gates, guard posts, surveillance everywhere, all of it dark when they arrived. The SUV rolled up the circular driveway and stopped near the main entrance. Roman, Claire, and Marco climbed out. The front door stood open. No guards, no staff, no movement, just silence. Marco drew his weapon. Roman pulled Claire behind him. They entered the house slowly. Inside, everything looked normal. Furniture untouched, lights off. No signs of struggle. Then they heard it, music, classical piano, coming from the ballroom. They followed the sound down the marble hallway, past portraits of Whitmore family ancestors, past the grand staircase, toward the double doors at the end of the corridor. Roman pushed them open. The ballroom was massive, chandeliers, polished floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. And standing in the center of the room was Katya Volkov, tall, elegant, late 30s, with sharp Slavic features and ice-blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a black suit that probably cost more than most cars. And beside her, sitting in a chair with her hands zip-tied behind her back, was Evelyn Whitmore. Claire's mother looked furious but unharmed. Mom, don't, Evelyn said sharply. Don't give her what she wants. Katya smiled. Evelyn Whitmore. Even captured, you give orders. I respect that. She turned to face Roman and Claire. Welcome. I've been waiting. Roman's voice was deadly calm. Let her go. Straight to business. How American. Katya circled Evelyn's chair slowly. But I'm afraid it's not that simple. What do you want? Everything you have. Territory, operations, influence, all of it. You'll never control Chicago. I don't need Chicago. I have New York, Boston, Philadelphia. Your territory is the final piece. Roman's jaw tightened. I'll burn it all before I hand it to you. Then Evelyn Whitmore dies, and Claire watches. Claire stepped forward. This is between us. Leave my mother out of it. Katya's eyes shifted to Claire. But that's the beauty of this situation, dear. Your mother isn't leverage against Roman. She's leverage against you. I don't understand. Roman would sacrifice himself for you. But you'll sacrifice anything for the people you love. That's your weakness, not him. Your compassion. The words landed like stones. Because Katya was right. Claire would trade everything to save her mother. And Katya knew it. So here's my offer, Katya continued. Roman signs over his operations, all of them. In exchange, I let Evelyn go. Everyone walks away alive. And if we refuse, Katya pulled out a gun and pressed it against Evelyn's temple. Then I prove that compassion is fatal. Claire's breath stopped. Evelyn's eyes met hers across the ballroom. Don't you dare, Claire Marie Whitmore. Don't you dare give this woman anything. Tears burned Claire's eyes. Mom, your father and I built this family on principle, not fear. You don't negotiate with terrorists. She'll kill you. Then I die knowing you didn't compromise everything you are to save me. Katya cocked the gun. How touching. But I'm losing patience. Roman's hand moved toward his concealed weapon. Katya saw it immediately. Don't. My people surround this house. You'll all die before you reach the door. Marco's voice came through Roman's earpiece, barely audible. Boss, we have a shot. Say the word. Roman's eyes never left Katya. His mind was racing, calculating angles, probabilities, outcomes. He could take the shot. Marco could take the shot. But if they missed, if Katya pulled that trigger, Evelyn Whitmore died. And Claire would never forgive him, never forgive herself. You have 10 seconds, Katya said softly. Then I kill her and move to the next person Roman loves. Maybe his sister. Maybe Marco's family. I'll destroy everyone close to you until nothing remains. 5 seconds. Roman looked at Claire. Her face was pale, tears streaming down her cheeks, her entire body shaking. 4 seconds. Roman made his decision. He started to reach for his weapon. And Claire screamed, Stop! Everyone froze. Claire stepped forward, her voice breaking. I'll do it. I'll give you whatever you want. Just let her go. Claire, no. Roman grabbed her arm. She pulled free. I'm not letting her die, Roman. If you do this, I know what I'm doing. She turned to Katya. You want compassion to be fatal? Fine. But you're wrong about something. What's that? Claire wiped her eyes, and when she looked up again, something had changed in her expression. Cold, focused, sharp. You think compassion makes me weak. But it's the only reason you're still alive. Katya frowned. What are you... The coffee you drank an hour ago, from my mother's kitchen. It was poisoned. The ballroom went silent. Katya's face went pale. You're lying. Am I? Claire pulled out her phone and showed Katya a photograph. The kitchen. A woman in staff uniform preparing coffee. Not regular staff. One of Roman's people. Planted weeks ago. Waiting. Katya's hand started shaking. The poison is slow acting, Claire continued, her voice steady now. 30 minutes before symptoms start. An hour before it's fatal. But there's an antidote. In a safe upstairs. And I'm the only one who knows the combination. Katya's gun wavered slightly. If you're lying, then shoot my mother and find out. The two women stared at each other across the ballroom. Predator and prey. Except nobody knew anymore which was which. Katya's face twisted with fury. You think you're smart enough to beat me? I think I'm desperate enough. And desperate people are always more dangerous than confident ones. Katya's finger tightened on the trigger. For a moment, Claire thought she'd miscalculated. That Katya would pull the trigger anyway. That her mother would die and this would all be for nothing. Then Katya lowered the gun. Get me the antidote. Let my mother go first. The antidote, now. No. The word echoed through the ballroom. Katya's eyes narrowed. You realize I can torture it out of you. You could try, but by the time you break me, you'll be dead. Katya stared at Claire, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not as collateral damage, not as Roman Devereaux's weakness, but as someone who'd learned to weaponize the thing everyone thought made her vulnerable, her love for the people she protected. Fine, Katya said finally. She cut Evelyn's zip ties. Evelyn stood slowly, rubbing her wrists and walked toward Claire. Mom, Evelyn grabbed her daughter's face. You didn't poison her. It wasn't a question. Claire's eyes filled with tears. No. You're bluffing. Yes. Evelyn smiled, fierce and proud. Good girl. Then she whispered something only Claire could hear. Now run. Everything happened at once. Marco fired. Katya dove. Roman grabbed Claire and pulled her toward the exit. Gunfire erupted. The chandelier shattered. Glass rained down. Claire hit the ground, Roman's body covering hers, as bullets tore through the ballroom. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Just chaos and noise and the weight of Roman's body pressing her into the floor. Then silence. Roman pulled her upright. Move! They ran, through the hallway, past the staircase, toward the front entrance. Behind them, Katya's voice screamed orders. Find them! Don't let them leave! They burst through the front doors. SUVs waiting, engines running. Marco was already behind the wheel. They dove inside. The vehicle peeled out, tires screaming against pavement. Gunfire followed them down the driveway. Bullets punched through metal. Claire pressed herself against the floor, hands over her head. Roman fired back through the shattered rear window. Then they were through the gates, onto the main road, speeding toward the city. Claire sat up slowly, breathing hard, blood roaring in her ears. Mom? She's safe, Marco said from the front. Different car, different route. She's already halfway to a secure location. Claire collapsed back against the seat. Oh, God. Roman grabbed her shoulders. Did you really poison Katya? No. Then how? I lied. I just needed her to believe me long enough to get my mother out. Roman stared at her. Then he started laughing. The sound was exhausted, relieved, borderline hysterical. You bluffed your way past a Russian crime lord using imaginary poison. It worked, didn't it? Claire, that was the most reckless... She kissed him, hard and desperate and alive. When they broke apart, Roman's forehead rested against hers. Don't ever do that again. I can't promise that. I know. They sat there as Marco drove them deeper into the city, Chicago waiting ahead like an uncertain future. And somewhere behind them, Katya Volkov was realizing she'd just lost the first battle in a war she thought she'd already won. Because Claire Whitmore had just proven something terrifying. She wasn't Roman's weakness, she was his equal, and together they were unstoppable. The safe house sat 40 miles outside New York City, hidden behind trees and iron gates that looked older than the country itself. Claire stood at the window watching dawn break over the Hudson Valley, while Roman slept in the bedroom behind her, his body finally surrendering to exhaustion and pain medication. They'd been here 3 days. 3 days of silence, 3 days of waiting, 3 days of knowing Katya Volkov was still out there, planning her next move. Marco appeared in the doorway holding coffee. Your mother's asking for you. Claire turned. How is she? Angry, terrified, proud, all at once. Claire nodded slowly and took the coffee. Evelyn Whitmore sat in the library downstairs, surrounded by security personnel reviewing surveillance feeds. She looked smaller somehow, like the events at the estate had stripped away some invisible armor she'd worn her entire life. She looked up when Claire entered. Close the door. Claire did. They stood there for a moment, mother and daughter, separated by 12 feet, and a lifetime of unspoken tension. You lied to a Russian crime lord about poisoning her, Evelyn said finally. Yes. That was either brilliant or insane. Both. Evelyn's lips curved into something almost like a smile. Your father would have been terrified and incredibly proud. Claire's throat tightened at the mention of her father, dead 5 years now from a heart attack that had taken him too young. I didn't know what else to do. You did what you had to. That's all anyone can do. Evelyn stood and walked to the windows overlooking the grounds. When you disappeared last year, I thought I'd failed you somehow, that the life we built, the empire, the money, the status, had damaged you so badly you needed to escape. It wasn't about damage, Mom. It was about discovery. I know that now. Evelyn turned to face her. But at the time, all I could think was that I'd created a world where my daughter felt invisible even while carrying our family name. Claire crossed the room and stood beside her mother. You didn't fail me. You gave me everything. I just needed to learn who I was without it. And did you? Claire thought about the past 7 months. Working as a housekeeper. Being invisible to wealthy people who looked through her like she was furniture. Meeting Roman. marrying into violence and chaos, learning that survival meant becoming something harder than compassion. I learned that identity isn't what you're born with. It's what you choose to build when everything gets stripped away. Evelyn reached out and squeezed her daughter's hand. Then you learned the right lesson. They stood there together watching the sunrise. Two women who'd spent their lives building empires, realizing that power meant nothing without knowing who you were when nobody was watching. Then Marco's voice cut through the silence. Boss, we've got movement. What's it? The security feed showed 3 black SUVs approaching the gates. No markings, no plates, just vehicles moving with purpose. Roman appeared beside Claire, still pale but steady, his jaw set with the cold focus she recognized from Chicago. How many? At least 12, Marco said, scanning the feeds. Maybe more. Katya? Can't confirm yet, but the timing's right. Roman turned to Evelyn. Get to the panic room, now. I'm not hiding. Evelyn. Roman's voice was quiet but absolute. Please. Something in his tone made Evelyn nod. She squeezed Claire's hand once more, then disappeared down the hallway with 2 security personnel flanking her. Claire grabbed Roman's arm. She came for us. Yes. Then we end this. Today. Roman studied her face. This woman who'd walked away from privilege to discover herself, who'd survived cruelty to understand humanity, who'd learned to weaponize compassion into something deadly. Are you ready for what that means? Claire's voice was steady. I'm ready to stop running. Roman nodded slowly, then he pulled out his phone and made a call. It's time. Bring everyone. He hung up and looked at Marco. How long until they breach the gates? 5 minutes, maybe less. Then we make them regret coming here. Katya Volkov stepped out of the lead SUV wearing tactical gear and carrying a gun that looked military grade. Her face was calm, controlled, dangerous. Behind her, 15 men spread across the grounds, weapons raised, moving with precision that spoke of training and experience. They reached the front entrance. The doors stood open. Katya smiled. They're inviting us in. How polite. She gestured her team forward. They entered slowly, scanning corners, checking sight lines. The house was silent, empty. Then Katya's radio crackled. Ma'am, we've got movement on the west side. Gunfire erupted. Katya dove behind a marble column as bullets tore through the entryway. Her men returned fire, muzzle flashes lighting up the dim interior. Where are they? Everywhere? Because Roman hadn't run. He'd called in every crew he controlled, every soldier who owed him loyalty, every person who understood that attacking Roman Devereaux's family was a declaration of war. And war was what they brought. Katya's men scattered, trying to establish defensive positions. But Roman's people knew this house. They knew the angles, the blind spots, the kill zones. Within 3 minutes, half of Katya's team was down. She retreated toward the ballroom, fury and disbelief warring across her face. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. She was supposed to arrive, overwhelm them with numbers, take Claire and Roman hostage, and finally break the man who'd refused to kneel. Instead, she was pinned down in a house that had become a trap. Then she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the shadows near the grand staircase. Roman Devereaux stepped into the light, unarmed, bleeding slightly from a wound near his shoulder, but standing. Hello, Katya? She raised her gun. Don't move. Roman stopped 10 feet away. You came here to destroy me. Yes. You failed. Katya's finger tightened on the trigger. Not yet. Your brother thought the same thing. He's spending 20 years in a federal prison learning how wrong he was. Dmitri was weak, emotional. I'm not. No, you're worse. Katya's eyes narrowed. Worse? You're smart, calculated, patient, but you made the same mistake he did. What mistake? Roman's voice went cold. You assumed Claire was my weakness. Footsteps echoed from the opposite side of the ballroom. Katya spun. Claire walked out of the shadows, holding a gun Marco had given her 3 days ago, with instructions she'd never wanted to learn. Her hands were steady, her eyes were clear. Hello, Katya? Katya's face twisted with rage. You! Me. I should have killed you in Manhattan. You tried, it didn't work. Katya swung her gun toward Claire. Roman moved instantly, closing the distance, his hand locking around Katya's wrist. They struggled. The gun went off. The bullet hit the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Roman twisted Katya's arm and the weapon clattered across the floor. She drove her knee into his injured shoulder. Roman gasped, stumbling backward. Katya lunged for the gun. Claire fired. The shot was clean, precise, not fatal. Claire aimed for Katya's leg, but enough to stop her. Katya collapsed, screaming, blood spreading across the marble floor. Claire lowered the gun, her hands shaking now, adrenaline crashing through her system. Roman was beside her immediately, his hand on her shoulder. Breathe. I shot her. I know. I actually shot her. You saved my life. Claire looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. I didn't want to. I know, but I did it anyway. Roman pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. That's what survival looks like. It's not clean, it's not noble, it's just necessary. Around them, the gunfire had stopped. Roman's people secured the remaining members of Katya's team. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Marco appeared in the doorway. Cops are 2 minutes out. We need to move. But Roman didn't move. He just held Claire while she shook, processing what she'd just done, what she'd just become. Someone who could pull a trigger. Someone who could choose violence when violence was the only option left. Someone who'd crossed a line she could never uncross. Dead. 6 weeks later, Chicago. The federal courthouse steps were packed with reporters, cameras, microphones, and people shouting questions nobody was answering. Claire walked through the chaos wearing a tailored black dress, her hair pulled back, her expression calm. Roman walked beside her, his shoulder healed, his presence as commanding as ever. They just testified at Katya Volkov's trial. Attempted murder, kidnapping, racketeering, conspiracy. The charges were extensive, the evidence overwhelming. Katya's defense had crumbled within days. Now she sat in federal custody awaiting sentencing while her entire operation collapsed around her. The Volkov family was finished in America, and Roman Devereaux had survived. But survival had cost him. 3 of his crew were dead. His territory had been tested by other families sensing weakness. His reputation as untouchable was damaged, and Claire had become someone she never imagined she'd be. Someone who understood that violence wasn't evil. It was just a tool. And tools didn't carry morality, only the hands that wielded them. They reached their car. Marco held the door open. Claire slid inside, exhausted, relieved, haunted by the weight of everything that had happened. Roman sat beside her. The door closed. Silence filled the space between them. Are you okay? Roman asked quietly. Claire stared out the window at the Chicago skyline. I don't know what okay means anymore. Fair. I shot someone, Roman. I looked her in the eyes and pulled the trigger. To protect me. That doesn't make it easier. No, it doesn't. Claire turned to face him. Does it ever get easier? Roman's jaw tightened. No, it just becomes familiar. The honesty hit harder than comfort would have. Because Roman wasn't offering her platitudes or justifications. He was offering her truth. And truth was the only thing that mattered anymore. I don't regret it, Claire said finally. That's what scares me. I don't regret shooting her. I'd do it again if I had to. That doesn't make you a monster, Claire. It makes you a survivor. What's the difference? Roman took her hand. Monsters enjoy the violence. Survivors just refuse to be victims. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I spent 7 months trying to discover who I was without privilege. Turns out, I'm someone who can pull a trigger. You're also someone who built a fashion line to honor domestic workers. Someone who gave Vanessa Holloway a roadmap to redemption instead of destroying her. Someone who chose awareness over revenge. That feels like a different person now. It's not. It's all you. The compassion and the violence. The mercy and the necessity. You're not one thing, Claire. You're everything survival required you to become. The words settled over her like a weight she'd carry forever. Not heavy, just present, a reminder that identity wasn't fixed. It was built through choices, consequences, and the refusal to break when the world demanded it. 3 months later, Paris. Inside a private venue overlooking the Seine, Claire Whitmore stood backstage preparing for the launch of her new collection, The Invisible Line. Couture created in collaboration with domestic workers, nannies, cleaners, and caregivers from across the world. The front row wasn't reserved for celebrities or influencers. It was reserved for workers, women who'd spent decades cleaning luxury homes while remaining unseen. Each gown on the runway carried pieces of their stories, embroidered names, stitched memories, details that honored lives spent in service. And every sale funded scholarships for their children. Evelyn Whitmore stood beside her daughter, pride radiating from her like light. Nervous? Claire shook her head. No, just ready. Your father would have loved this. Claire smiled faintly. He would have hated the chaos that led to it. True. But he would have been proud of who you became through it. The lights dimmed. Music started. The show began. Claire watched from the wings as models walked the runway wearing creations that bridged privilege and purpose, beauty and meaning. The audience was silent at first. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then the entire room rose to their feet. Not for the clothes, for what they represented. Visibility, dignity, recognition. Backstage afterward, Claire found someone waiting near the dressing rooms. Vanessa Holloway. She looked different, thinner, quieter, carrying herself with less arrogance and more awareness. I wasn't sure you'd come, Claire said. Vanessa smiled nervously. I wasn't sure you'd want me here. I invited you. I know, but after everything... Vanessa. Claire's voice was gentle but firm. You're here because you chose to be different. That matters. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. I started working with that nonprofit you mentioned, Domestic Workers Alliance. I've been funding legal advocacy, safer working conditions, better pay standards. I heard. It's not enough. It'll never be enough to undo what I did. No, it won't. But that's not the point. The point is building something better than what existed before. Vanessa nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of that truth. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not giving up on me when I deserved it. Claire studied her for a long moment. I didn't do it for you, Vanessa. I did it because the world doesn't need more revenge. It needs more people willing to change. Vanessa wiped her eyes and nodded. Then she left, carrying the lesson with her instead of running from it. Claire stood there alone for a moment, breathing in the aftermath of everything. Then Roman appeared beside her, silent, steady, watching her with unmistakable pride. You did it, he said quietly. We did it. No, Claire. This was you. She leaned into him, exhausted and relieved and somehow still standing. I couldn't have survived without you. Yes, you could have. You just didn't have to. Claire looked up at him. This man the world feared, this legend people whispered about, this person who'd taught her that survival meant becoming something harder than kindness. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Regret what? Marrying someone who made your life more dangerous. Roman's hand cupped her face. Claire, you didn't make my life dangerous. You made it worth protecting. The words broke something open inside her chest. Because Roman Devereaux, the most feared man in Chicago, the mafia boss everyone avoided, the legend who never showed weakness, was looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered. Not because she was fragile, because she was strong. Not because she needed protection, because she'd proven she could protect herself. And that made her irreplaceable. 8 months later, New York. Claire stood inside her mother's design studio while sunlight spilled across sketches and unfinished gowns. On a mannequin near the window sat the ivory dress she'd worn to the Chicago Gala, the one that had started everything. She traced her fingers across the crystal embroidery and thought about that night. How terrified she'd been. How determined. How certain that exposing Vanessa's cruelty would somehow fix the world. Now she understood the truth. The world didn't fix itself through single moments. It changed through accumulation. Through choices repeated until they became character. Through people refusing to stay broken even when breaking felt easier. Her phone buzzed. A text from Roman. Home in an hour. Dinner? Claire smiled and typed back. Yes? I'll cook. You can't cook. I'll order takeout and pretend. Perfect. She set down her phone and looked around the studio one last time. This was where she'd started. Born into privilege, surrounded by beauty, carrying a name that opened doors most people never knew existed. And she'd walked away from all of it, searching for something real. What she'd found was brutal and beautiful and more complicated than she'd ever imagined. She'd learned that cruelty lived in invisible spaces, that dignity wasn't reserved for people with status, that survival sometimes required violence, that love meant choosing someone even when choosing them made everything harder, and that identity wasn't something you discovered. It was something you built through every impossible choice, every painful lesson, every moment you refused to break when the world demanded it. Claire Whitmore had disappeared intentionally. She'd returned as someone else entirely, not weaker, not softer, just aware. Aware that privilege was responsibility, that power was choice, that compassion could coexist with strength, and that the measure of a person wasn't what they owned or where they came from or who recognized their name. It was who they remained when everything got stripped away, and she'd remained herself. Through the cruelty, through the violence, through the chaos, she'd remained herself, different, scarred, but unbroken. Claire walked out of the studio into the Manhattan afternoon, the city noise washing over her like a familiar song. She thought about Vanessa Holloway working with domestic workers' advocates. She thought about Dmitry and Katya Volkov rotting in federal prisons. She thought about her mother building a new collection inspired by Claire's journey. She thought about Marco still protecting Roman like a brother. And she thought about Roman Devereaux, the most feared man in Chicago, the Mafia boss who'd chosen her when she had nothing, who'd loved her most when the world stopped recognizing her name, waiting for her at home, ready to build whatever came next, together. Because the story was never about becoming invisible. It was about discovering that visibility without authenticity was just performance, and authenticity without courage was just decoration. But together? Together they were transformation, the kind that didn't erase who you were, the kind that revealed what you'd always been underneath the noise. Claire Whitmore had spent 7 months cleaning other people's homes. Now she was building her own, not with money or status or inherited privilege, but with choices that honored who she'd become through surviving what should have destroyed her. And that was worth more than any empire. That was worth everything.